Welcome to High Octane Leadership with Donald Thompson. This season, we're diving deeper with more solo episodes, where I'll share the experiences that have led to recognition by EY, Forbes, Fast Company, and others. Not as a boast, but as milestones on my entrepreneurial path. From growing multi-million-dollar firms to successful business exits and building high-performance teams with a global perspective. I'll reveal the insights and strategies from my journey and share them with you so that we can win together. Alongside these solo episodes, we'll have industry visionaries and thought leaders, and we'll explore effective leadership. Ready to empower your leadership journey with real success stories? Let's embark on this transformational journey together.
Today, I would really like to explore how leaders can maintain culture. And really, this is about relationships amid uncertainty and volatility in the business economy. In particular, the reason I wanted to talk about this today is because of the ongoing labor volatility with Boeing, the recent dock workers strike, which thankfully just wrapped up, thank goodness. But there's also a tremendous amount of CEO shakeups. It seems like uncertainty is a constant. How can leaders maintain a sense of continuity? And so that's the background. The first question is, what is the risk of not maintaining culture in relationships?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. Leadership at its very core is a relationship. And so when you think about leadership as a relationship, and then you take it out of the business context, you put it into any context you want, right? A relationship with your religious leader, your priest, your pastor, relationship with your politicians, relationships with your employer, relationships with your spouse, with your kids. Once you get people to think about leadership as a relationship, you understand that relationships are also dynamic. We change as we age and grow and mature. We change based on new experiences. We change based on behaviors of one party or the other. And so when you think about it in that dynamic, now all of a sudden leadership is not dynamic. Static. It's dynamic. And so now back to your question of how do we maintain the value of culture in this kind of sea of change? I'll echo your question and say this. I've said to many colleagues recently, the world is off its axis. It's just different, right? So if you think about post-COVID, right? And you mentioned the dock workers strike. You mentioned strike in things that are Boeing. If you talk about Boeing, think about the fact that we rely on safety. Our relationship with Boeing as a company, as consumers, is about safety. And you don't know day to day if a Boeing plane's door is going to fall off, if the wheels are going to fall off, it's going to catch on fire. The relationship has changed, right? If you think about our politics, we've had a 50-50 nation, Republican, Democrats, some independents, for years, right? But the relationship has changed because now that politics has now dominated how we feel about other people that we love and care about in our relationship. It's divided families more than ever before. It's 24/7 on the TV. If you think about Axis and you think about the war in Ukraine, you think about Israel and Iran and Hamas. So if you take a step back at what an average, just individual person in the world is dealing with, right? Uncertainty is the new normal in a very aggressive way. So now bringing it to the work context and answering your question, a lot of leaders get it wrong that you have to be right all the time. It's not true. You have to be liked all the time. Also not true. You have to be agreed with all the time. Absolutely not true. Part of leadership is part of being misunderstood. But what your teams expect related to your culture is consistency, clarity in the midst of chaos. And so it is radically important that people can find some level of true north in what they're doing and how the work that they're doing is tied to the mission of the organization. And that mission is strong enough, valuable enough to help people keep some semblance of focus. And that doesn't mean it's easy for a leader to do. So that means a couple of things to think about. That means your communication skills and channels with your team has to increase. That means if, we used to have this concept when people were in the office more of leadership by walking around, right? You just would go check on people and say hello to folks you haven't seen in a minute and different things, right? In this digital realm, how do you do that? It's not impossible, but you have to be more intentional. And so that means that you have to drop into team meetings in different departments. That means you have to use your Slack channels or your email or a weekly. You have to decide how you're going to make communication with your team a high priority. And it's not necessarily just about the business, but about how they're doing, things that the company has available to support them in this time of crisis. Personally, the word that sticks to mind for me is authenticity. When you have an authentic connection with people, such that they can bring you concerns, fears, problems, all of a sudden you're working on things together, and your teams, your employees don't feel the weight of the world as individuals, weight of the world as a small team. It's hard, but it's important. If you think about North Carolina, literally, Asheville, North Carolina is off the map based on the hurricane that just came through. Now, it's not positive, but a ray of sunshine in that tragedy. And the thing that I'm really curious about overall is, why does it take a tragedy for all of us to unify? Democrats, Republicans, independents, gays, straight, men, women are giving to this cause, giving of their time, their talent, their treasure, of trying to be supportive, right? Because we all know and have that feeling of thankfulness. It could have been me. And then when you get to that base level of humanity, then you start to care. And I wish I had some kind of magic wand to get people to care and be concerned about their neighbor on a daily basis, not just as a reaction or response to tragedy. And so that's a long-winded way to answer your initial question, but I think leadership has a huge responsibility. And that responsibility is to be the calm in the storm that we're all facing, and to acknowledge that it's weird out there now, right? Even if we don't have the answer, right? Just to acknowledge that the world is off its axis, and therefore people are going to be a little bit more skittish, right, about everything. And so being more thoughtful, careful with how you speak to people, how you uplift, a little bit more recognition, things of that nature.
So I love that answer, and thank you for that. And I really appreciate you bringing in Western North Carolina, because I mean that has touched everyone, our family, everyone I know. Just our hearts are just broken for those people out there. So I want to bring back to um, what's the risk? So why should, at the very basic level, why should CEOs, senior leaders take time out of their schedule to invest in, what some might say is, oh, that's just like, that's that emotional stuff. I don't have time for that.
Yeah.
What's the risk?
So think about, and I appreciate it, what's the risk of CEOs minimizing culture, minimizing the value of relationships? I work with hundreds of companies over a year, and many, many CEOs and C-suite leaders. And leaders are always trying to understand risk reward for anything they do. So let's just look at it from a financial standpoint. We often talk about services, solutions, programs that increase productivity, right, of your team. What we don't really talk about a lot is the decrease in productivity when your team leaves a bad meeting, the decrease in productivity when your team feels uncertain about its leadership, the decrease in productivity, right, when people don't feel like the leadership is competent or caring. And so a lot of times you can talk to leaders about the opportunity, but really have to talk to them about the risk, which is your question. In a time of uncertainty, people tend to spend more time on what they can't control, which is worry, which is fear, uncertainty, and doubt, versus the things they can control. And you as a leader have a high risk if the majority of the time your people are thinking about things they can't control in your market, in your community, right? But if you are clear, concise, and caring that, yes, we're going through a tough time. Maybe our financials are off in business. Yes, we're going through a tough time. Our community is going through a tragedy. Here are the things that we need to simplify, focus, and accomplish together. And here's the reason why. Because as we grow, we can do more in our community. As we're successful, we can protect more jobs. As we innovate, we can see our products and service used in a very, very powerful way. I'll give a very cool example. One of my best work experiences, Grant Willard, my mentor, hired me as employee number 7 for a software company in Raleigh, North Carolina, many, many years ago. And it was in the engineering space and the computer-aided design space. So we built software to help engineers that manufactured things, right? Our clients were Raytheon, Boeing, Lockheed, John Deere. Somebody's manufacturing a tractor to help farmers feed a nation. That's how Grant told me the importance, the value, the commitment to excellence in what we do. Because when we served John Deere, when we moved and migrated their data accurately, correctly between systems, we did so at a fair price. We did so in a timely manner. Then John Deere's engineers around the globe could build high quality equipment for farmers to feed a nation. When Grant described that to me, now my work, I wasn't just a sales professional. I was a business leader helping our clients save and change the world. When we talked about the work that we did with Raytheon, we can say whatever we want about the United States of America. I'm glad I'm here. I'm glad our military is strong. And I'm glad if somebody messes with us, we're going to kick that ass. I am good with that, right? I'm proud of that. I'm thankful for that. We got all kinds of problems, but I'm good with that. So therefore, when we thought about the technology we were using with some of the largest military contractors in the world, so that the missile that they built got into the arms of our military to protect us, that the data was solid so that they could achieve their mission, and we did our small part. So by connecting my job to the well-being of others, I had a clear, crisp, and powerful focus on what my mission was. And so a lot of CEOs have mission statements on their website, and that's where the mission statement lives. The mission statement needs to live in the daily behavior of you and your team. And the risk of not being able to do that, the risk of not understanding how to storytell, the risk of not being able to create that connection between what an employee does and the positive outcome of what your company can accomplish, then allows your team to let all the outside impacts be the dominant focus of the day. And that creates negative financial impact, a lack of a cohesive culture, and people that just don't care as much and are going through the motions of their job. And no business leader wants that.
So I'm going to pull back. I love your stories, and I'm going to invite you to tell a story about, or we know that our company, TDM, went through our own upheaval a year ago, almost a year ago. How did you as a leader, and this is going to be tricky because there's two parts of this. The first part is, how did you communicate that clarity, continuity, and care to your team while we were going through that? And at the same time, how did you maintain your own mental health? Because that was so challenging. That must have been that must have been really tough.
And if you're, when you say our own upheaval, it's an interesting word choice, right? And what you're talking about is close to a year ago, TDM was sold to Workplace Options, right? So it's interesting that you use the word upheaval. And then in the business world, I get all kinds of pats in the back. You exited, you sold your company, different things, right? So there's different lenses to that. And then anytime you're taking a small band of high achievers, corporate warriors, because we all joined TDM to change the world, and then you integrate that business into a great business, great team, but larger team, right? We were a team of 20. Now we're a part of a team of 1,500, right? With a global theater. So that means there's a way different day-to-day structure of how business operates. We went from a office that we had curated as a team that we moved our corporate home to a different home, right? We have different rules, reporting structures, and our mission hasn't changed, but the way we can deliver against that mission has changed significantly. So one thing that you have to do during upheaval is, number one, you have to be honest. Everybody's not going to like the change. Two, there's going to be things in the change that are unanticipated, that are different than expected. And then three is you have to realize why the change is positive and why the overall outcome is strong. So let's look at it from a business lens first. About a year ago, the Republican machine, it doesn't matter if you're Republican, Democrat, I'm getting ready to say something that's fact. Republicans spent millions of dollars attacking DEI. Every talk show, every radio, woke culture, attacking laws and legislature, going against LGBTQ, book ban. Like, it was literally a frontal attack on, they called it the culture wars, right? Whatever, right? But it was pretty aggressive towards a business that we were building, and it created a sea of misunderstanding because people associated then DEI with a political instrument versus diversity, equity, inclusion as a business driver, which is what we do. Diversity, equity, inclusion is a way to enhance culture, which enhances the bottom line, which creates a better outcome for the business and for the leader. To create a more powerful training program for an organization so that they can train and they can retain and they can grow top talent. No leader in the world doesn't want to mentor emerging leaders. Well, that's what we believe is DEI. No leader in the world wants to have people paid inequitably. That's what we believe, right? Leaders, right, want their team to have high levels of productivity and feel safe. What leader wants their people to feel unsafe at work? Nobody. These are the things we do, but we got caught up in a political power struggle, and we became a part of the attack narrative. So then as a leader, what I had to explain to our team is that we needed to get out of the tornado in a small little house, even though we loved our house, even though it was a boutique house. It was a great house. And everybody had their own room. Everybody had their own room in the house. It was fantastic. To join a battleship that could weather storms better so that our mission could continue with less disruption because of the external noise. So that was the decision that had to be explained. So then when the team said, well, I like my chair, my office in this building, I don't like my chair and office as much in this building, right? Well, maybe the choice isn't one or the other. Maybe we weren't going to have a chair if the tornado hit us. Right? Say, this chair is now better because this chair is solid or more solid, right? Because being a multi-million-dollar business, which we were, successful, which we were, all the things, 150 plus clients, which we have and have grown, we've now joined an organization that's $140 million business. So the infrastructure of growth, protection, and being able to go on offense, here's the other reason we did it. And we had to explain this to people. So that in the midst of chaos, we could still go on offense. We could still be aggressive. We could still be assertive. We could still grow. We could have a growth plan versus survival plan. Because if you're small and if you're small in a market, right, anything can kind of push you off balance. But if you're a market leader and then part of a bigger machine, you can get there faster and safer. And I wanted to still move fast and safely. If you're smaller in chaos, you can't move fast and safely. You have to then focus just on safety. So explaining that was not a one conversation thing. That is over the course of a year for our team to get settled into a new normal and really get back to the highest level of productivity that we had before. And the last thing I'll say, and I apologize for rambling, is that it's a great example because when companies are bought, acquired, merged, it is one of the most significant emotional events for employees. Right? Above that is probably when the team's going through like layoffs or extreme financial stress. That wasn't the case for us. Like we weren't going out of business. It wasn't a fire sale. It wasn't that. It was we were trying to get a better place because I saw a hurricane coming. And I wasn't going to allow my team to be in a hurricane in a small boat. We were going to weather that hurricane in a big boat. Right? And that is what we had to explain to the team in multiple levels, individually, as a group, in writing, so that people could step back and reflect and say, you know what? It makes sense. It may not feel like the right thing because we loved being we loved being the DEI Avengers, right? Like just this little engine that could, right? Like that was our swagger. So we've had to learn how to develop new swagger within a bigger team. And anytime you're learning something new, that also has anxiety, but it also has opportunity, right? And that's what we ended up focusing on after a little bit of bumpy road. And there's nothing wrong with admitting that.
So I know we're just about out of time, but I did want to just invite you briefly to talk about you had to do all that communication when you were going through the same thing. How do you compartmentalize that? What was that what did that look like for you?
Here's the thing that is interesting. My close friends have asked, but most people don't ask how you're doing, being the CEO, running your own show, being chairman of the board, and then being integrated into a new business. Most people in the new business, they don't ask how you're doing. They ask how your numbers are doing. They don't ask how you're doing, because as a leader, you're expected to take care of yourself. It's a faulty expectation, but that's the expectation. You're good. You make good money. You drive a nice car. You got the most out of the acquisition. You are fine, right? During the time we were going through the negotiations and ultimately signing the deal with Workplace Options, my dad was very sick. He went through 3 brain surgeries in the 45-day period of time. There was a high likelihood that he wasn't going to make it. And thankfully, he pushed through. He's doing amazing. He's lost like 60 pounds. He is radically focused on everything health. I took him to an Atlanta Falcons game to see the Atlanta Falcons play the Kansas City Chiefs. My daughter, my son, we all went to this, and sister in Atlanta. And he walked around the whole time like a champ. He's headed up today, and he's a former college football coach, and one of his star players, Julius Peppers, was inducted into the NFL Hall of Fame. And so we're headed to UNC this afternoon for a private celebration with some of the folks at UNC and Julius Peppers. And we're going to go into a suite at Keenan Stadium tomorrow during the game and just all this stuff, right? But a year ago, and I will say this, I don't know if I've shared this publicly, the day that we signed the deal with Workplace Options was also the day that we brought my dad home from the hospital. And so going through all of that at the same time and still living regular life, right? And building your regular business, all the stuff was one of the most challenging times in my life career that I can remember. So your question is, then how did you push through? Well, Amber, you've been on my team for a number of years now. I can't let you down. Just because I'm struggling, just because I'm working through something, I can't let you down. I can't let Allison down. I can't let Kurt down. My team is my family. So even though I was struggling, even though I was hurting, I couldn't take a month off, a week off. I can do that now. Things are more settled, of course. But as a leader, you have to focus on the responsibility that you have and the results you signed up to deliver. And the difference in leadership than being an employee. Employee, you can let how you feel affect what you do. As a leader, I don't have that luxury. I have to deliver what I committed to. Rain, sleet, snow. And it was really, really hard. And just thinking about it, and I try not to think about like it was, I don't really use the word trauma that often about myself, right? But as I reflect on what I went through, even though some of it was very good and some of it was very scary, that stress and strain changed me. And I know that there are people that lost people they love. So I'm still blessed, right? Because we came out of the other side and got more time, right? There's people every day that don't get more time. So I'm very aware and have my struggle in context, right? It was hard, but we survived. It was hard, but we won, right? And so that is something I also keep in mind when I think about what I had to rebuild and resolve to kind of push through it. But the way that leaders do it, the way that I do it, is I have a very authentic connection to the people that I'm charged to fight for and protect. And I try to honor their choice to work with me by being the best that I can, even on my worst days.
Thank you for joining us on High Octane Leadership with Donald Thompson. Today's episode is a step in our collective journey towards leadership excellence. Remember, every story we share and every insight we gain is a piece in the puzzle of our leadership journey. For more insight and detail, hit the subscribe button so that we can stay connected. For deeper information and more episodes, go to donaldthompson.com. Continue to lead with vision and purpose, and until we meet again, embrace your role as a high-octane leader in the ever-evolving world of business.